This lesson is on defense mechanisms. Defense mechanisms are behaviors that an individual might use to cope with an uncomfortable situation or a problem. Sometimes it may be to keep you out of trouble. It may be to make yourself look good in a group. It may be so that you're not embarrassed. For many reasons, these defense mechanisms come up, and they are usually a reflex. We do not plan on saying them. We do not plan on putting ourselves in these situations. It just happens. It's an unconscious response. Now, because it is unconscious, it doesn't really make it wrong, but it doesn't justify our behavior. The bad part is that if a person uses a defense mechanism over a long period of time, it changes a person's thought pattern to where it can become very harmful to their mental state. The first one we're talking about is compensation. Compensation is when a person tries to make up for his or her weaknesses by developing strengths in other areas. For an example, a struggling student with a learning disability becomes a leader in an art club. Why? Because they are very good at art. They may not be good at learning something, but they're very good at art. So they do that, join an art club. Now, what's so wrong with that? It can become harmful because they're not trying to overcome any weakness. They're always going to be strong in art, but their academic learning styles will not be strengthened because they're putting it off. They're not strengthening that weakness that we have. Daydreaming. Now, we all do this, and we get blamed for this many times, but it's a person who escapes unpleasant, boring, or frustrating situations by imagining that he or she is doing something else. Many of you do this in the classroom when you get bored in class, or you get bored at home, or you get bored with the conversation that people are talking about. An example, a shy student imagines that he or she is homecoming king or queen. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. But the reason they're dreaming that they're homecoming king or queen is because it's something that is not possible. A shy person will not ever become king or queen of homecoming because homecoming is a time where they are voted on popularity. It's like a popularity contest. And shy people are not really popular. Now, the other part is that it's harmful because it's the refusal to accept reality and spending a lot of time in an imaginary world. Never really living in the real world. That's when it begins to change your brain process. Denial is usually refusal to accept reality. An example is a student finds out that a relative has a terminal disease. The student continues to act as though the relative is going to live. Now, of course, we want a relative to live even though they've been diagnosed with a terminal disease that will end their life. Many times we're not ready to emotionally accept the fact of that person not being with us any longer. It may be the person itself being diagnosed with something and refusing to accept it, maybe going to several doctors before they really come to terms that they have a disease. Harmful thing about this is the continual inability to accept the situation long after it has occurred. Now, if it is a person who has a relative who has a terminal disease, the never really believing that they're going to die is kind of hard for that person because you begin to see the person deteriorate in the sickness that they have, and it becomes even harder to accept. The longer you deny it, the harder it is to accept the reality. Displacement. This is a really good one, and we use it all the time. A person transfers the emotions his or her feelings from the original situation or object to another situation or object. For example, a student is angry with a parent but yells at his brother or sister. This happens all the time. You have done it. You get in trouble. You take it out on a brother or sister. Or you get in trouble or have a bad morning and you come to school and you take it out on your best friend. You yell at them for no reason. Your teachers do this. They have a class that comes in before you and they've given them a hard time, and you come in for the next class and they blame you and you get penalized but you didn't cause any of the problems that they had. This happens all the time. A parent at work may be frustrated and comes home and yells at you and you had nothing to do with their frustration. The harmful thing about this is continuously taking anger out on an innocent person. It can ruin relationships. It can cause people to have a different opinion about you. It can build a poor reputation. Those type of things. Humor. A person focuses on a funny aspect of a painful situation. For example, a person is called a bad name and then refers to himself by that name to deflect the teasing. Now, that's one way of dealing with bullying, is kind of laughing along with them, which is fine, except for the harmful part is the person is accepting an injustice if something's not true. Name calling should not be tolerated. When a person is called a name, and even though they laugh about it, deep down the emotional aspect of that begins to get larger, and they begin to question, well, maybe this is true, or they begin to believe what the bully or the person who is teasing them has said about them. Identification is a person who tries to assume the qualities of someone who they admire. Example, a person wants to be like a famous person, so they begin to dress and act like that person. This happens a lot with elementary kids. They might want to be the next super athlete that they see on TV, or a movie star that they've seen, or a musician that they admire, and they want to be like them, and they start dressing like them and try to talk like them, and they learn everything about that person. The bad thing about that is measuring your own worth to someone else's standards instead of developing your own. They never really develop who they are. If elementary school, this is something that happens all the time, usually isn't doing any harm, because they kind of grow out of it. If we have middle school or high school students doing this, we have some major issues. They do not know who they are. They are living a life that is not theirs. Projection, a person shifts the blame or responsibility of his or her actions or thoughts to another person. We tend to do this a lot also. For example, a student does poorly on a test and says that the teacher wrote an unfair test. Two students are passing a note. The one passes a note to one. The other one gets caught with it. They say, well, she passed it to me. In a fight, one guy hits the other guy. The second guy gets blamed for it because he threw the second punch because he was protecting himself, or the other guy threw the first punch. It's blaming someone else. The fact is, you still passed a note. You still hit the other person. You still failed the test. Those type of things. The harmful thing about that is refusal to accept responsibility for your actions. By middle school, you are held accountable for your actions. The things you do, that's what you do. You are held accountable for. If it's wrong, then you should face consequences. If it's good, you should receive rewards for that. Rationalization is an attempt to justify one's actions with an excuse rather than admitting one's failures or mistakes. A lot of times this happens in a kid's life because to try to deflect embarrassment. For example, a student justifies flunking a test because he or she was absent the day it was scheduled, or the dog ate his homework. It could be that you didn't make the basketball team because the coach hates you. You're justifying, you're making up an excuse instead of facing the fact that you weren't good enough, you didn't study enough, you didn't do your homework, whatever it may be. The harmful thing is that you're not accepting responsibility again for your actions. Regression is retreating to an earlier time that seems less threatening and requires less responsibility. For example, a student has trouble fitting in at middle school, so he or she returns and visits their elementary school thinking that it would be nice to stay there. Now, there is not a problem visiting your old teachers, but then when you do it on a regular basis, there could be a problem. You're wishing that you never got out of elementary school. Some people do this a lot when they have a younger brother or sister that's born. Now you have more responsibility as an older brother or older sister, and you just want to be the little kid again. Those type of things. The harmful thing is the refusal to move on and mature within a reasonable amount of time. Your maturity level slows down at that point. Repression, blocking out thoughts that are unpleasant, things and experiences. Repression is actually an unconscious method of escaping something unpleasant. For example, a woman is raped, she pushes her thoughts out of her mind, and she doesn't even think it happened. The harmful part is the inability to recognize what has happened, especially if she needs to receive help. She will not receive help if she doesn't accept the fact that it has happened. This can be as simple as forgetting a dental appointment because you hate going to the dentist, or not doing that science project because you hate science. It all works the same way. You're repressing it because it's unpleasant. Sublimination is transforming unacceptable behavior into acceptable behavior. It involves redirecting specific behaviors. For example, a student likes to get into arguments, so he or she decides to join the debate team. We have this problem where we have young men or boys who have anger issues, and what we do is we get them involved with football or wrestling. That way they can take their anger or aggression out in a sport that they are doing within the rules. It's a contact sport, and they can work out their frustrations there. The harmful thing is the inability to recognize that you need to change unacceptable behavior into acceptable ones. In other words, you still may need to go to anger management or something like that. You need to accept the fact that you don't know everything, whatever the problem may be. Suppression is our last one, and it's an effort to hide and control unacceptable thoughts and feelings. For example, a student is attracted to someone, but he or she says that they do not like the person at all. Harmful thing is the inability to let true feelings show. It's hard to let people know exactly who you are, especially in middle school, but this can be a problem.